With the first pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select
Trophy Chase, Arizona.
With the second pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select
Cody Smith, Houston, Texas. The Fantasy Draft Room is now on the clock.
Welcome to the Fantasy Draft Room. I am Chase. You can find me on Twitter at Trophy Chase TFDR. And as always, my man Cody, where can they find you at?
As always, y'all can find me on Twitter at Cody Smith TFDR. You can check out the joint account on Twitter at _TFDR, YouTube, where you should be watching this episode because we're going to dive into another draft that you can see the draft board on the YouTube channel. If you don't want to do that, you can also just keep listening to the pod. If you're listening on that format, wherever you get your podcasts, if we're not on that podcast format, let us know. We will get it there. And I think that's all we got to plug, except for all of the rate, review, like, subscribes, all of those things. Leave us
please.
Comments, all of those. Love it for the algorithms. And now I think we're done with all the plugging we got to do.
Yep, like and subscribe, baby. All right, so it is playoff time. It is officially here. It has happened. It is happening. We are going to dive into several things. As you mentioned, we're going to get into an actual startup draft, a $250 buy-in draft that is going on right now. We are, big money. Yeah, nice chunk of change. It's nothing to scoff at. So these people are really making picks for their future. But we do have some big time playoff implications here where people can advance to the finals. So we have some matchups we want to dive into here, as well as some picks we're going to go through as well. But let's kick things off here. Both of us are in a league where the trade deadline has not quite happened yet. And this is tied into the matchups here. And you made a trade here that I just wanted to kind of touch on since you are competing. And it was a win now move. So tell us what you did and what the situation is.
Yep, situation. It's a best ball league, and I was actually the 12 team. I was a 6th seed. However, there's a lot of parity in this league. There was only a couple hundred points separating first from 6th. The top 2 teams have also dealt with some injuries. And so I was like, you know what? This is one of my last higher money leagues that I'm in. I'm still alive in the playoffs. And I got bounced the night before. I made this move by 0.9 points in my other league that I would have wanted to, make it in because Alan Lazard only caught 1 pass. If he caught 1 more, I would have won. And so I was like, you know what? We're going to go full send. We're going in for this league this year right now. We're going to make the moves. And so what I did was I pulled up our rest of season matchups. I pulled up the matchups, seeing who is weak against the teams that are facing them right now in terms of fantasy points given up. We did this episode a couple weeks back, looking at weeks 13 through 17. Now we wanted to look at just weeks 16 and 17. So pulled it up. We saw that Tennessee was the greatest matchup in terms of giving points up to Houston is the worst team in giving points up to the running back position. And so they're facing the Tennessee Titans and Derrick Henry, who runs for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns guaranteed every week or every time they play them. 4 times in a row it's happened. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go full send. Give me some Derrick Henry. I sent away a first-round Debbie depleted pick. I sent away Tyler Lockett, and I sent away another piece, got back Derrick Henry and Chris Moore. And so if he smashes this week, which seems like it could be a pretty good possibility as long as history holds true, get a smash week out of Derrick Henry and try to get to the ship in this league, man.
Yeah, I mean, and when we talked it through, like it was Tank Bigsby, a Debbie depleted first, and then Tyler Lockett, and when you really think about it, it's kind of like 3 seconds for Derrick Henry. And if you win, you obviously don't care. And in the end, like if you have Derrick Henry going into next year, you still feel pretty good. Yeah, he's aging. We talked about the running back cliff data last week, but he's a guy, and he's a true workhorse and one of the last true workhorses in the NFL. So we both believe in him, beyond just these last few weeks. So I think it's going to work out for you in the long run as well. But I did really like that trade. I think it's going to help give you that push, and it's a league winning move, right? Like if Derrick Henry smashes down the stretch, he has an easy schedule. Like you said, Houston is the worst run defense, averaging 200 yards against over the past few years against Houston. So I felt like it was a great win now move for you. It definitely puts you in contention with the top dogs, and it gives you another separator piece that could smash week in, week out.
Yeah, it does. And he faces the best matchup in terms of against the running back this week. He does face Dallas the next week, which is the third toughest matchup. So not great there, but I'm just trying to get to the ship, baby. Get me to the ship and I'll figure it out from there.
Yep, give me to the money round. So let's actually dive into some of those. We'll talk about a trade that I did too while we go through this. So let's get into the quarterbacks right now. The bottom 10 range here. I'm just going to kind of list some of the names that are some of the teams that are in this bottom 10 range. So Carolina plays Detroit, Green Bay against Miami, Houston, Seattle, the Jets, Pittsburgh, the Giants, Tampa Bay, Buffalo, Baltimore, and the Chargers are all facing bottom 10 defenses this upcoming week 16. Seattle kind of stands out against Kansas City. Should be a high-scoring game. Geno Smith should be passing for a ton of yards, or have the opportunity to pass a ton. Tyler Lockett being out does put a damper on that. Maybe fire up some DK. Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers against Miami. Again, another high-scoring affair in Miami, so it'll be warm. But you'd like to think that Aaron Rodgers is going to have the opportunity to pass against Miami, especially with the scoring options there. Any other names? Carolina, Pittsburgh, the Jets, Giants, anything stand out to you of maybe another start that you'd be looking at?
Yeah, I mean, the other ones that I think you're looking at here, Tom Brady hasn't been great. Tom Brady going against Arizona, a bad Arizona team, could be a potential blowout game. I like Tom Brady there. Other than that, I mean, you've got Baltimore against Atlanta, but that Baltimore team has looked broken without Lamar. It even looked broken with Lamar. It's even getting worse now. So, to be honest, I'm trying to get a different option than Tyler Huntley. If he's even the quarterback, then you've got the Brown guy. I definitely don't want to start him ever. And then, if we're looking at our best matchup, it's Carolina versus Detroit this week. Fire up some Sam Darnold. It's risky, but Detroit bleeds points. And I would actually start up Darnold in some places. With all these quarterback injuries we've got, you're fishing for options, and these are the guys we're looking at.
Yeah, in a redraft league where I'm losing Jalen Hurts, or I'm assuming I'm losing Jalen Hurts, I actually just picked up Danny Dimes, and he hasn't had great weeks, but he does face Minnesota this week and Indianapolis next week. So two good matchups down the stretch here where I'm like, you know what, I'm going to take the gamble on him. It's just the upside play where it's like, look, if I can get 20 points out of you, I'm pumped. So that's kind of the last one there as well. Let's get into the running backs. You mentioned Derrick Henry, King Henry against Houston. That should be a eat 'em match, and I'm looking forward to seeing him do 200 yards yet again. Kansas City against Seattle, Pittsburgh, New Orleans, in Cleveland in a negative, what's supposed to be a freezing cold game. Chargers, Indy, Tampa Bay, Miami, Buffalo, the Jets, and Baltimore, all bottom 10 are facing bottom 10 teams. Excuse me. So, New Orleans, I've been pumping Alvin Kamara down the stretch here. He didn't score a touchdown, ended up getting you over 100 yards on the ground last week, or over 100 yards total last week, just missing that tutty. I'm thinking he has the opportunity again, but it is freezing cold weather, run game. They're probably going to feed him. And then Najee against Las Vegas. I think you got to fire up Najee this week. Like, people have been hesitant on him. Any other running back situations kind of pop out to you where you're like, I'm willing to start this guy or throw this guy out there?
Yeah, Najee's actually been picking it up here as of late, so I'm perfectly fine rolling out Najee. The second best matchup going up, KC against Seattle. I'm fine starting Jerick McKinnon and Isaiah Pacheco this week. Probably Jerick McKinnon, I don't know if this is going to – I don't think this level of production is going to be sustainable. But, man, if it's a team that they can do it against, it's going to be Seattle because they just bleed points to the running back. Outside of that, Tampa Bay against Arizona again. I know we just mentioned Tom Brady, but both those guys can catch the ball out of the backfield as well. So if you want to fire up either Leonard Fournette or Rachaad White, perfectly fine with those two as well.
Yeah, the last ones, like, they're kind of dart throws. Miami against Green Bay. Find out what's going on with Jeff Wilson. But Mostert had a great week last week, in the workhorse role. Fire up some Mostert again if he's going to get that kind of workload, or even Jeff Wilson if he's healthy. So both of those are some solid streaming options. Devin Singletary against Chicago. It's going to be a cold weather game. It's going to be in Chicago. Again, it's another one of those games that is projected to feel like the temperature is going to feel like it is -10 degrees. So it is going to be Illy. And, run game warms people up. So maybe Devin Singletary would be a good option to fire up. And then my guy in the preseason was J.K. Dobbins, and J.K. Dobbins against Atlanta. You can bet on another 100 yards on the ground. I think J.K. Dobbins is going to win some people some leagues. So if you have J.K. Dobbins and you're debating on starting him, in my honest opinion, I am firing that dude up. He looks great in the hole. It's just getting up to that top end speed for him. So let's jump over to wide receiver here. All right, once again, Houston actually facing Tennessee is the easiest matchup. So Houston, Carolina, the Giants, Philly, Seattle, Vegas, Baltimore, Atlanta, the Jets, Chicago, and Detroit are all facing bottom 10 teams against wide receivers. Are you firing up these Houston wide receivers against Tennessee?
I'll fire up Chris Moore, and if I'm in super desperation, I'll fire up Brandon Cooks. Outside of that, there ain't a single one of them I'm firing up. And to make matters worse, you kind of mentioned it and hit on it as we're going through this. It's going to be cold and windy, basically, if you're anywhere outside of California or Florida. And man, seriously, if we want to go back to those, if you want to go back to those running backs and look through those again, I can send out this data to anyone. I'll post it again on Twitter as well. If you want to go out and look at it, we don't have it posted or pulled up here, but I'm perfectly happy sending those out. I'm firing up running backs over wide receivers everywhere this week in lineup, because there are going to be so many games that are affected by this cold front. If you're not playing in a dome, and like I said, if you're not playing in a dome, you're not playing in California or Florida, I don't want to be firing up most wide receivers in this week, because it's going to be absolutely disgusting outside everywhere.
Yeah, man. And even looking at some of the other matchups that we mentioned, like Philly, most likely without Jalen Hurts, it seems like, against Dallas. Like, it seems like it's going to be an easy matchup, but we haven't seen Gardner Minshew out there. So it doesn't feel great, firing up some of maybe, Devonta Smith maybe doesn't have the rapport with him. I still like Seattle. I think DK Metcalf will be a great one against Kansas City, because Kansas City is going to put up points. Like that Seattle defense is soft. Seattle's going to have to pass the ball to stay in. Vegas, I do like as well. Again, another cold weather game. Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow. I still like Mac Hollins. We'll see kind of how that stuff plays out. But yeah, man, I'm with you. Like it's a running back week. The Jets in Jacksonville tomorrow is going to be a cold one. Chicago, Buffalo. Yeah, these wide receiver matchups aren't great. We'll send out the data so you can kind of make your own educated decisions. Look at the weather. Just because the matchups are great does not mean it's just going to be a cakewalk this week. Weather is going to be a huge player in how these guys perform. So let's just dive right into tight end and finish this off. Again, facing bottom 10 teams: Tampa Bay, Kansas City, Houston, Green Bay, Baltimore, Carolina, Arizona, the Jets, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and Jacksonville are all facing bottom 10 teams against the tight end position. Obviously, Kelsey stands out right off the rip. This is a get-right game. He had 100 yards last week with 10 catches. Looked like, great numbers, but he still is missing those tutties. I think this is a big-time touchdown game where maybe he counts off his 5 touchdowns. But is this a get-right game for Mark Andrews without Lamar?
Oh man, that offense is just like broken. I mean, if you have Mark Andrews, you're probably going to be starting Mark Andrews wherever you have him, because you probably don't have a better option. So yeah, I'm perfectly fine firing up Mark Andrews. The one at the top, Tampa Bay against Arizona, I'm perfectly fine starting Kate Otten this week. Arizona is notoriously year over year the worst against tight ends, and it's held true this year. And I forget exactly where they're playing. They're either playing in a dome or Florida, so both of those are good. And so perfectly fine starting them there. The game we got tomorrow night, Jacksonville and New York, that's going to be another one of those cold games. And I do want to mention before we get out of this, and we've mentioned the cold, it's not really just the cold. The cold is fine, but it's the wind, especially for like the game that we have tomorrow night. Whenever winds are gusting 50, 60 mile an hour gusts. I mean, this is what we saw back in that the New England and Buffalo game, right? Where New England just decided, hey, we're not throwing the ball. And so they're just be careful, be mindful of those wind gusts, be careful of the cold, snow, everything that's going to be out there this weekend. Make sure you know what your weather conditions are, and then use that with these opponent ranks to try to target some matchups.
Absolutely. And you know, I would love to say fire up some Conklin and some Mark Ingram. some
Evan
oh
Ingram.
my goodness, Evan Ingram. I'd love to say fire those guys up, but with the wins like that, it's really challenging to say do that. I think this would be a good opportunity for Freiermuth against Vegas. Uh, yeah, weather matters. Look at the conditions. Look, it is not just the cold and wet, it is wind, and passing the ball around, wind matters. So check out those matchups, see what would be a good one for you and your team. If you have some questions on start sits, message us here in the comments. We'll definitely give you our input and our feedback based on the information that we have on hand. But we just wanted to give you some kind of team names to kind of think of as you are going through your lineups here and your most likely semifinal matches for week 16. So let's dive into anything else you want to cover before we move on.
Nope, I think we're good with this one. Let's dive into we're wrapping up the fantasy season. We've got a new segment that we're gonna roll into. We don't have matchups that we can talk about and set lineups for every week now. Those are going to be running out here soon. Hopefully they go all the way through week 17. We get some dubs there. But for the rest of the season, we're going to start this one off. We're going to be starting this week, doing it every week all the way through the Super Bowl. We are going to be picking every game against the spread, keeping track of it all the way through. It's going to be me versus Chase. We'll have a running tally up throughout the rest of the season, and we'll see who comes out the winner on this one. This is not financial advice.
I was going to say, this is not gambling advice. This is just a thing between Cody and I that we were trying to do a challenge and see where we're at and how good we are on this. So.
Exactly. But if I do start hitting at 75% clip, then you might want to start tailing. But as soon as you do, know that it's going to fail and we're going to go down to 0 the next week.
Yep. Exactly. All right, so let's kick things off here. Let's do Thursday night. We got the Jacksonville Jaguars and the New York Jets. Mentioned weather conditions. This is in New York, so this is going to be a chilly, windy game. I am taking Jacksonville plus 1.5 over the Jets. I think they're going to win this game outright. They've been hot. They actually can make the playoffs. They can make the playoffs. Everything is setting up perfectly for them. The Jets, they've been kind of in turmoil lately. They just lost to Detroit. I'm just going to take Jacksonville plus 1.5 over the New York Jets.
And yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that's the same thing. It's going to be, maybe Zonovan Knight can get something going on the ground, but I think I'm still going to lean ETN on the ground with this Jacksonville offense, a team led by Zach Wilson this week in the cold, in the conditions. I'm going to go with the team that's been catching fire with Trevor Lawrence lately. I'm going to take Jacksonville to plus 1.5 as well.
Love it. So Baltimore and Atlanta coming up next year. I really struggled with this pick just because of the quarterback situation for both teams, and I really wanted to pick Atlanta, but I'm taking Baltimore giving up 7. I think Baltimore is going to get the ground game going, and I feel like it might end up being a push, but I'm going to take Baltimore giving up 7 points against Atlanta in the Dome.
All right, and I'm going to go the other side on this one. I think that Ritter is not going to be a major factor in this one. They're going to use the ground game. Algier, Cordell Patterson are going to be running over this Baltimore team, the Baltimore offense, even though they have stepped up their running game with J.K. Dobbins. A little bit broken. I'm going to be on Atlanta plus the 7 and taking the points.
Love it, love it, love it. All right, so Detroit and Carolina. Carolina giving up 2.5 here. I want you to go first on this one. This one I really struggled with.
All right. Yeah, I struggled with this one too. And honestly, the only reason, so this one came down close to me, and I think the only reason that Carolina is up at plus 2.5 is because they're home. All of these teams are listed as away teams at the top, home teams at the bottom. I'm going to be taking the home team, the Carolina Panthers, plus the 2.5.
I ended up picking Detroit giving up the points, and I think for me, it came down to I was looking at that week 16 data, and I was looking at how bad that Carolina defense is, and it just feels like a prime game for Detroit to drop points. I think Carolina is going to do the same against Detroit, but I feel like Detroit has the better offense in the end, and I'm going to give up those 2.5.
All right, let's move into this Buffalo and Chicago game. Buffalo catching 9 points against Chicago, or minus the 9 points against Chicago. A large spread on this one. On this one is where I'm just taking the better team. I still don't believe in the Chicago offense. And so I'm going to take Buffalo to just dominate this game with Josh Allen and taking the 9 points with Buffalo.
Cold, windy home game. Buffalo is going to win this game, but it is going to be a lower scoring game, in my opinion. I think it's going to stay close. I'm taking Chicago getting the 9 points, but Buffalo is going to win this game probably by 7. Is what I think it's going to be. It'll be closer just because of the conditions that are probably going to limit the offense. I think Monty and Fields can get the ground game going enough to keep it competitive, but it's still going to be a Buffalo game for me.
Yeah, Buffalo on the money line, but we're split on the spread. So we got some differences here through the first 4 games, taking the first 3 games on Saturday all the way on different sides. We're going to have some comebacks having to be mounted on week 2 of this. The next game, we got New Orleans and Cleveland. Cleveland -2.5 favorites. I don't understand this one. Whenever I looked at the spread, Cleveland at home against a bad New Orleans team. Give me Cleveland -2.5. I don't even need to talk about this one.
You know, it's funny you say that, man. I'm actually taking New Orleans and the points. Okay. I'm taking New Orleans and the 2.5. I feel like this is a game that New Orleans can win. Like Alvin Kamara on the ground, they're going to use Taysom Hill and gadget formations. I feel like the run game of New Orleans is better, and I feel like Nick Chubb missing back-to-back practices worries me. So that is my big thing. I don't think Nick Chubb is playing this week. I don't. And that is why I'm going to lean on the New Orleans ground game and what they can do over what Cleveland and Kareem Hunt can do. So that is the only reason. I would love to say, since we're recording this, I'm just going to leave my bet or leave my pick as is. But if Nick Chubb does play, I'm probably going to want to flip-flop. But New Orleans +2.5, give me that.
All right. Yeah. And if we see some major movement on this money line, obviously we're doing this on Wednesday. We're going to be dropping this one on Friday. So hopefully we're actually going to be retroactively doing this Jacksonville and New York Jets game where we took the same side. Hopefully we were right on that one. Let's get into the Seattle and KC matchup. You go first on this one.
All right. So this one I struggled with, and I think Kansas City is going to beat them, but I was like 10 points. I'm taking Seattle +10. Seattle +10 here just feels like the right move. I feel like both offenses will get it going, whether it's the ground game or in the air. I do think Kansas City is going to win, and it might end up being a push because Kansas City's at home. But again, weather conditions come into play. It's going to make things a little bit lower scoring, in my opinion. So I'm going to take Seattle +10.
And I'm also going to be on the opposite side on this one. We are going 5 for 5 on this one. All right. So reason I'm taking KC, I'm looking back at that running back data. I think Isaiah Pacheco and Jerick McKinnon are going to run all over Seattle. I think they're going to be, I think on the other side, they're going to be good enough to stop Ken Walker. And I think Kansas City is going to win this one by more than 10. I'm hoping for maybe like a 13-point game in this one.
I know for fantasy purposes, you're really relying on that Mahomes-Kelsey stack. So I know what you want.
That one bakes in a little bit probably.
So I'm looking at the next matchup here with Minnesota and the New York Giants, and it was another one that made me think, but that Giants defense has been just getting crushed lately. Minnesota -4, give me those 4. I'll give up those 4 points. Minnesota's going to crush them, and easy enough.
Yep, Minnesota at home in the dome. They're going to be passing the ball all over them with Jay Jett coming off the high of last week's comeback win, historic win, best in NFL history. Yeah, giving me again -4 against New York.
Love it. All right, so we got Cincinnati at New England. New England giving up 3 points. This one for me was too easy. I'm taking Cincinnati. I'll give up those 3 points. There's no explanation needed. Cincinnati is just the better team. I don't care that New England's at home. None of that matters to me at all. It's going to be the Cincinnati show, and they're going to beat them by 7+.
Yeah, actually, like I said, Cleveland and New Orleans didn't make sense to me. This one also didn't make sense to me. I'm right there with you. Cincinnati +3 or -3.
Perfect. Houston, your Houston Texans on the road against the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee without Ryan Tannehill. Where you got on this one?
This is going to be Houston Houston all the way. Fuck that. No, this is Tennessee. Derrick Henry, again, he's going to rush for 200 yards, 2 or 3 touchdowns, and Houston might score a touchdown. -3 doesn't make sense to me. I think I could take it at -10. Give me Tennessee.
Houston, outright win. Houston, outright win. That's what's going on right now. Malik Willis in the game. I know that they're just going to load the box and try to stop Derrick Henry. Whether they can or not is a whole other story. That Tennessee secondary is awful. I feel like Houston's going to do enough. They were able to compete with Kansas City. Yeah, it was a home game, so it's a little bit different circumstances. But I'm taking, you're going to give me Houston +3. I will take those points. We are different again on this one. I'm taking Houston +3.
Last game, Malik Willis was also playing against Houston. Derrick Henry still rushed for 30 attempts, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. They won 17-10, covered the -3. This time they're at home. Yeah, it's Tennessee. I'm a pessimistic Houston fan, though, so I'd bet against them every single time if I could. Regardless, let's move on. Let's move into the Washington versus San Francisco games. San Francisco with -9 going up against Washington. Washington's actually been a little bit of a better team than I've thought. Brock Purdy's looked good, though. I think this is Jimmy G. You could almost even see a little bit more, but -7 feels like a lot. I'm still going to take San Francisco, though. I think Brock Purdy's going to do well enough in Frisco to beat Washington by 7 or more.
Yep, San Francisco giving up the 7 points, I'm good with. I feel like the ground game is going to get going. CMC has looked incredible with this offense as they've actually opened him up and let him do more. They're just going to walk all over Washington, in my opinion. And that San Francisco defense should be able to lock down Terry McLaurin and whatever Heineke is going to do on offense. San Francisco give up the points. So moving on to a big-time divisional matchup, Philadelphia on the road in Dallas. Dallas giving up 5 points here. Now, again, Jalen Hurts, questionable, most likely out this game. I'm going to assume that he is out, and I am still going to take Philadelphia +5. I feel like the spread is just too much. Gardner Minshew should be able to do enough to keep this a close, competitive game. So I'm going to give up those points. I don't know who the winner is, but Philly +5.
This is, I still haven't made up my mind on this one as we were going into this, and I'm glad you went first on it. I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to take Philly +5, regardless of whether Hurts plays or not. I think if Jalen Hurts was in this game, it'd be a much larger spread. Much larger, I don't know, maybe like a 7.5 point spread here. But yeah, I'm still going to think that Gardner Minshew is able to do enough to keep this within 5.
All right, we have Las Vegas on the road in a chilly, cold, windy game in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is giving up 2.5 points as the home team. I kind of want you to go on this one. Who do you have first, or who do you have on this one?
Yeah, on this one, I think I'm just going to take the best running back who's been putting up the most yards in the league. I'm going to take the Raiders in this one. The conditions favor it. I know Najee's been good. The Pittsburgh Steelers are good against the run, but I think it's close enough game. I think it's going to be ugly. It's going to be a very close game. Probably going to come down to a field goal at the end. Hope that the Las Vegas Raiders are on the right side. Catch them +2.5.
Yep, I actually have Vegas +2.5 as well. Same kind of reasons. I do think Derek Carr will be able to actually get the passing game going or play action pass going with Devontae Adams. Darren Waller, looked good enough in his return. So love to see that down the stretch. Let's move on to Green Bay in one of the only warm and sunny games we have in Miami. So Miami giving up 4 points to the Green Bay Packers. Man, I'm taking Miami -4. That Green Bay offense seems inept. I feel like Miami should be able to do enough against Green Bay's secondary to put up some points, and I just don't think Green Bay is going to be able to keep up.
Yep, Miami actually even played well in the cold whenever we all didn't think they would. That narrative was put out there a lot last week. They played good in the cold. They're going to play even better in the warmth whenever they go back home. Give me Miami -4.
Love it. All right, Denver on the road in L.A. Now, Los Angeles is giving up 2.5 points. I'm going to have you go first on this one since it's my Broncos. Who you got going on here?
Yep, your Broncos stink. We're going to take the Rams at +2.5 at home. Baker Mayfield looked competent enough to run this offense. At times, he's looked better than Russell Wilson has this year. So I'm going to take LAR +2.5.
I'm a pessimistic Denver Broncos fan as well, but I'm taking the better defense here, and Denver has the better defense. Russell Wilson is back. I guess that means something. It's supposed to, I guess. But yeah, I'm going to take Denver, giving up 2.5 points on the road. I do think that they're going to be able to do enough. I just don't know. Like, as you get film on Baker Mayfield, you see what this offense looks like with him. It's going to be a limited playbook, and I think Denver's defense is going to shut him down. So that's that.
All right, let's move into our next one. Tampa Bay, Arizona. Arizona catching 7.5 with Kyler Murray out, with Colt McCoy out. We're now down to a Trace McSorley game. And this is why this is a 7.5 game. It obviously wouldn't be without that quarterback situation. So is Tom Brady good enough, with as bad as he's looked and as bad as this offense has looked, to beat Arizona by 7.5? I am going to lean yes. I don't feel good about this one. This is another one that I was somehow even tossed up against Trace McSorley. I can't bet on Trace McSorley. I'm not taking that side almost no matter what the spread is. I'm going to take the GOAT and Tom Brady and think that they figure out a way to beat them by 7.5 or more.
Yeah, man. When I looked at this game and I was like, I think Arizona could lose by 7. Like, I could see that. And I'm like, it's Trace McSorley. They have an awful defense. I'm like, Tampa Bay, I'll give up the 7.5 on the road. I think that, they'll be able to figure it out enough to win by almost double digits or double digits. So let's wrap this thing up with our week 16 matchups with a Monday night game. The non-thriller that is the Los Angeles Chargers on the road against Indianapolis. Indy giving up 4.5. Who do you have here?
Yeah, 4.5 with Big Dick Foles. No, I'm going to take the Chargers in this one. Indy just came off. I mean, good God, Matt Ryan, how do you do that twice in one career? That's just awful. Could be his last career is the worst comeback loss in NFL history. This Indianapolis team is falling apart. I'm going to take the Chargers minus the 4.5.
Yeah, I debated on switching it when Nick Foles was named the starter, but I'm sticking with it. Chargers minus 4.5. Chargers team has looked really good since Justin Herbert and company have been all healthy. We got Mike Williams out there, Keenan back out there. Things seem to be clicking a little bit better for that team. They're still in the playoff hunt. They want this. They're gonna want this more. And I think Indy's just deflated after what happened last week. So.
Yep, I think that wraps us up for all of week 16. We'll be back again with a full slate in week 17 and then one more full slate in week 18. Those week 18 games are going to be tough, though, with all these teams either knowing they're in or out of the playoffs. That's one of the hardest weeks to bet. But we'll keep track of this the rest of the season, and hopefully we'll be, I'll be blowing you out by that point, and it won't even matter what we're doing in the playoffs. It won't matter, and we'll just keep it rolling.
Come on, man. I'm surprised we had 6 different picks. I'm surprised that we actually had 6 totally different picks. And they were all those, mostly those early games. So I'm probably going to be dead wrong, but hey.
Oh, no, I'm horrible at this stuff too. We'll probably come out. We'll both be at 40% somehow.
Yep. Love it. So we did, as we mentioned, Dynasty startup mock, or not even a mock, Dynasty startup draft, $250 buy-in that these people are in. And Clay was gracious enough to share this with us. He is the Heisman tier in Destination Devi. So thank you, Clay, for sharing this with us. We are not going to dive into the team specifics on this episode. We're purely going to look at the players, where they are located, where these rookie picks went, because that is kind of what's important. We will do a part B of this, which we will dive into some of the trades that happened, some of the team building that happened as well, because when you are putting that kind of money on the line, people, should be taking it serious. So we'd love to give those people their credit and kind of see what those teams look like. So without further ado, we're going to look at the first 6 rounds. We're going to look at 12 rounds total, so you can kind of see how teams were built. And here we are through the first 6 rounds. We have 8 rookie picks off the board. And I think we have some surprises in the first round. This is the first time I've seen Jonathan Taylor in the first round and as the first running back off the board.
That one is, I think we were all shocked whenever we opened up this board for the first time and saw that one. Over with all the DD guys, we are very anti-running back, as we've come to see throughout this regular season and as we're starting to be throughout the offseason as well. I don't think anybody in there is taking a running back in the first round. Jonathan Taylor hasn't been producing like an RB1 yet. Again, this season, he's also injured again, going on IR for the rest of the season as well. Maybe that's going to give him some time to rest up and heal up, and this Indianapolis offense can figure some things out. But Jonathan Taylor in the first could not be me. I'm either Chase Jefferson or a quarterback in the first round, because this is super flex, man. And you're telling me that I'm going to be out a quarterback, I'm taking the most highly variable position in a running back as well. I need to be locking up my quarterbacks here if I'm not taking J Jet or Chase.
Yeah, man, I just can't. I can't do running back this early. I mean, I'm hesitant to even do the second round and maybe even the third round. Like when you see some of these names on the board that are getting taken off, Jacobs, Pierce in the fifth round, Eckler in the fourth round. Like, yeah, Jonathan Taylor is young, and yeah, we've seen him put up an RB1 season, but you mentioned it. The volatility at the running back position is so real, and you can find equal or better production later on. I am not the one that is taking a running back this early in the draft.
No, I can't do it. And even if you're going to ask me which running back I want Bijan, man. Like even at this point, without knowing the draft capital, without knowing the draft position, I think that's locked in enough for Bijan that one, the name cachet on Bijan is going to just increase throughout this offseason, and it's already at a peak. People are already naming him the RB1, probably already my RB1 right now as well, if he were to be in the league right now. And so I'd at least have Bijan over him. And the other one in the first round that just baffles me, I know he's hurt right now. He's probably not starting again this week. But Lamar Jackson, I know he's been having some rough performances this year, but I am truthfully in the vein that he's not going to be back in Baltimore. And even if he is, he's not outside of my tier 1 guys. Like there's no way I'm taking Lamar Jackson after J-Jet and Chase. I'm getting me a BAM tier quarterback who I still believe is Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, man. I think when I when I looked at the quarterback, I want to look at quarterback as a whole as well. Like Lamar Jackson, yes, he's still in the first round. I get that, but I'm still not taking Jefferson or Chase over him as much as I love both of those guys. Like, give me Lamar freaking Jackson. This is a startup that is kicking off next year. So that is, for me, is a steal pick. But man, when I looked at quarterback, when you just look at the first 3 rounds, like the fact that Kyler Murray, I know people are down on Kyler Murray. I know he's hurt, and I get it. Yeah. I'm with it. He's still a top 10 quarterback for me. And I just can't drop him down. That I can't be taking Breece Hall or Jalen Waddle or these rookie picks over Kyler Murray. Like the fact that he fell there, like that is a steal. Trey Lance in the third, like the back of the third. Oh man, Dak Prescott mid-second. Like some of the quarterbacks really surprised me at where they ended up falling. Was it a shock to you?
Same as you, man, especially with Kyler and Lance are the two. I think we've consistently seen those guys, even after the Kyler Murray injury in all of our mocks. I think we've still seen them both early second round for Kyler, and then back of the second, normally mid back of the second for Lance. Dak even, I mean, Dak's still probably a first-round QB for me, man, and getting him here at the 2-5 feels pretty damn great.
Yep.
Watson, I am interested with these guys at the turn, though. Fields, Lawrence, Tua, and Watson, because I think we can start to have a conversation about the order in which these guys are going. I know we've been down on some of these picks so far, but I'm not a Fields guy. I'm getting there. I'm still climbing up with the rest.
You're trying.
I'm getting up there. He's still an early second for me. No, he's probably not an early second. He's back of the first for me. I'd still probably have Deshaun because of what I've seen from Deshaun over a longer stretch of period. But what do you think about these quarterbacks at the turn? Fields, Lawrence, Tua, and Deshaun. Do you have any problems with the order these guys are going off here?
You know, it kind of goes just that whole group, and you can include Dak Prescott and Kyler Murray with that group, I think. And you know, I think Lamar should be with those top 5. So I think order is preference, right? Like people are believers in Justin Fields, his legs, and he's just going to be a low passing volume guy. And that's something you have to be able to understand. But his legs are for real, man. And if he's rushing for 1,000 yards, like that's Lamar Jackson-esque. He's going to, I mean, he's going to be a legitimate top 8 quarterback in Dynasty if that's the case. That's something that Tua doesn't have. That's something that Dak doesn't have. So I feel like I'm okay with Fields and I'm okay with Lawrence being there. I would probably bump Deshaun up. I know it's been a struggle as of late, but again, when you're at the quarterback position, trying to knock off Russ, it's not like Jamar Chase going out and catching footballs, running routes. Like Deshaun Watson has to read defenses. The NFL has changed since he last took a snap in the league. So he's had a lot of like mental processing, not only learning a new playbook. He wasn't even able to have the playbook for the time that he was suspended. So there's a lot of things. So as the season has changed and the playbook has changed, he wasn't able to adapt and adjust. I'm okay putting him up there too. But yeah, I think it's personal preference when it comes to any of those 6 guys, and you can mix and match them around. I've been a Tua hater, and I'll stop after this so you can kind of chat about this, but like Tua has been up and down all year. He's had highs, he's had lows, and I'm still not fully on board with Tua Tagovailoa. I think he's a good quarterback. He's definitely top 12. I'm not going to say that he's not, but I would be taking Kyler, Dak, and Deshaun Watson over him.
I think I'm right there with you on that. I think we're pretty similar throughout the quarterback landscape. We like some more proven talent than the shots on these guys, because especially with Tua, I think it's the problem we talk about with a lot of these guys that we're going to see coming off the board here, where we presume they're going to come off with these rookie picks, right? Where what's the path forward to launch yourself up into this BAM tier, this by any means necessary, I want these top elite producing quarterbacks. And I still believe that Kyler Murray and Deshaun Watson hold that possibility. Tua's volatility, the offense has been fantastic around him this offseason or through this season. The offense has been morphed and given him every chance to succeed. And we've still seen some volatility that I don't think is going to put him up into that tier for me, but I'm perfectly fine, like you said, having him up in my top 12, 13 quarterbacks.
Yeah, good player. Very good player. I definitely not what I thought he was going to be, but I think it's also, kind of like the San Francisco offense. Like as a quarterback, we're seeing it's hard to fail in that San Francisco offense if you just do what you're asked. Brock Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant. He was the last pick in the draft, and he is succeeding and looking good in San Francisco. Similar offense in Miami, great weapons, great team around him. It's hard to fail. So it does make me wonder if it's system or if it's Tua, because we've seen a little bit of both be effective. But yeah, again, as long as he's tied to that offense, I want him.
Yeah, and he's going to be tied to that offense for the next 2-3 years, right? Like that ain't changing. So I'm perfectly fine with buying into Tua at the price. I do think we see, I don't know if we've seen AJ Brown sneak into the back of the first round yet. That's one that I'm honestly perfectly fine with. If you are willing to play it a little bit more risky at quarterback, I still want to get my top 12 quarterbacks locked up here. Getting Tua is still nice here for a quarterback. Man, snake draft is just hard because being put at this 112 spot is just rough. And you don't have a 3rd round reversal in this draft either to come back and get you another top quarterback. So you don't even have a shot to get even Lance or any of the top 3 rookies here if we assume they're going off of the 1, 2, 3, and 4. Well, it's a bold proposition for me in a startup if I have to live with that. But, we do have trades in this draft. We're going to get into the actual team building specifics here later. So we'll see some of these teams do trade up and trade back out in and out of the quarterbacks in this round. But A.J. Brown in the first, I actually don't mind it all that much, although I would like to get the quarterbacks locked up a little bit more yet. After we see those quarterbacks go, I think we've talked about them enough here. We do see the first tight end come off the board, relatively in the same range where we've seen tight ends coming off the board, but we see the order is flipped from the guys, most of our mock drafts and our data has been coming from Destination Devy guys. And here we see Mark Andrews, Kyle Pitts, and then Travis Kelce. They're always the top 3, but the order does vary slightly. Kelce being in the middle of the 3rd though, man, back into the 3rd even. Whew, I'd be all over that. I'm fine with Kelce in the middle of the 2nd in almost any build.
Yeah. The struggle for me was Pitts. Like I like Pitts. I do. I love him. But Travis Kelce, man, he's putting up points. He's going to be doing it for the next 2 to 3 years. Maybe there's productive struggles. So again, team specific things. But for me, I'm okay. Flip him however you want. You can justify it to me one way, shape, or form. And I'll accept people's reasonings. What I found shocking about the tight ends as we look at these first 6 rounds, man, like the fact that we saw Kittle, Hawkinson, and Goddard come off the board. And it is tight end premium, but it's not a super heavy tight end premium league. So I was a little surprised to see those 3. I don't know if it was the reaching, if it was just overexcitement. because you see those top 3 go off and you're like, I don't want to miss on that next group. But that felt early to me. Like if I'm missing out on Andrews, Kelsey, and Pitts, let me rephrase. If I'm missing out on Andrews and Kelsey, I'm passing on tight end for a long time.
Long time. Yeah, I'm probably not taking him in the first 6 rounds even. And then we see Kelsey's the first one off here out of that group too. And you're in a lot more than I am on Kelsey. It's one of our biggest differences in player evaluations. But I mean, Kelsey, I'd take Freiermuth over Kelsey. I know he's coming off of a big game, but he's old. Yes, I'm sorry. Good God, no, I wouldn't.
I was gonna say, I was like,
Kelsey. Ooh, that'd be some spice right there.
I was like, we are the same with Kittle or with Kelsey.
Kittle. Let's take all of those last minute and rephrase that. Find and replace Travis Kelce with George Kittle wherever you can, wherever I just said that in the last minute. No, George Kittle, I am much lower on than you.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't even be taking him over Pat Freiermuth at this point. I'm going to go with who I think are fairly similar players in terms of their production. And I'm going to take the youth in that scenario. So it's a bit of a reach for me. And like you said, it's a little bit of a reach in general on the tight ends, unless we're playing in, those super heavy premiums, but it doesn't sound like this league is exactly that. But, locking up the position, it is a positional, I don't know how much of an advantage, but if you do have one of these guys, it's a heck of a lot better than when you're dumpster diving for like the K-Dottons of the world.
Yeah, and for me, when it comes to the team building aspect, we're not getting into team specifics, but just where I'm drafting these players, it goes to variance, right? Like, running back has a lot of variance. Tight end has a lot of variance outside of that top 2 or top group essentially. And so, Kittle, got me calling him Kelsey now. Kittle, Hawkinson, Goddard, Freiermuth, like those names, they're all able to put up decent tight end numbers, but it's super volatile, and I can find a bunch of other guys that can put up similar numbers week in and week out, or I can stream some options. But like that's my big thing with tight end. So I do want to dive into the wide receivers here, because you mentioned AJ Brown going in the first, and we see Jalen Waddle and CeeDee Lamb in the second there. That's your top 5: Jefferson, Chase, AJ Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Waddle, and then we have Kupp, Metcalf, Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra, and Chris Olave. Now, when you look at those first 3 rounds, do you feel that that's the right fit? Does it feel like, what does that look like to you?
The ones that I'd want to reorder, I mean, once you get outside of the top 4, or the top 5, top 4 here, because I think I have Jefferson, Chase in their own tier, and then there's the behind them tier of AJ Brown and CeeDee Lamb for me.
Yep.
Then there's a group of like 7 guys that if you want to make a case for any one of them, I can understand it. I have a little bit of a different ordering than how they came off here, but it's whatever. The 2 that I have that are a little bit higher for me than where I would have them, I'd move them to the back of this tier. If it was me, I'd move back Waddle and I'd move back DK. Those guys, we've seen a very high volatility with Jalen Waddle in this offense that he's running in Miami, where he's just gone dead silent for multiple games in a row. And it's just been, Tyreek Hill pretty much taking over the offense, and he's the one who's pretty good, more consistent than Jalen Waddle. I know the youth is going to play into this factor here in the Dynasty startup. So again, I'm fine with it. It's just not how I prefer to have these guys. And DK Metcalf, he's had a lot of allure as a wide receiver 1, but I don't see this offense changing, and he's just been producing kind of like wide receiver 2 clips for me. So I'd rather take a shot with some of these younger guys or some of the elite older guys like the Kupps, Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra's, and Chris Olave's of the world.
Yeah, DK, he's put up, I think, wide receiver 7, 14, and right now he's on pace for 12. Overall numbers, as far as where he's finishing, I like DK a lot. So for me, I'm with you on Waddle. I'm down to bump him down. He's a very good player, but the 3 names really that I think are shocking to me that aren't in the first 3 rounds is Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, and Devontae Adams. And yes, Devontae Adams is 30, but man, I'm taking Devontae Adams over Chris Olave. I think I'm taking him over Amon-Ra St. Brown. Maybe he belongs with that group, I think. But I think that's my struggle is when you see guys like Tyreek Hill and Stephon Diggs, and sure, they're older, but you got Cooper Kupp coming off the board at the 3-3. I mean, I would be putting those guys right in there. I'd be sneaking those guys right in the back, 5, 6, 7 range above the guys that were waiting to truly prove it. Like these guys are doing it. And for me, that's big.
It's a difference in how we dynasty, man. Like
Yeah.
I bet that this guy in the 3 slot here, I bet he's kind of more on our side of things where we like our proven talent. We don't really we factor in age obviously into our rankings, but
Yeah.
we definitely don't factor it in as much as a lot of the people that we probably see here in this league. It's probably why Travis Kelce is the lowest out of the tight end group, where we'd probably have him as the tight end 1 coming off the board. It's why people are dropping on the Diggs and Tyreek Hills of the world. And you can see, I'm not your Da. I don't know what his full name is. I'm sorry. I'm not your Da. But he comes back and takes another guy that totally fits the build in Devontae Adams. His probably preference style of play. And so I think that's just how the dynasty landscape is different from player to player. It depends on how you want to play the game. Do you want to go for the win now pieces, or do you want to build the long-term dynasty that you're going to try to hold these guys for the next 5 years and hit on the young guys, hit on the youth, the guys that can vault themselves up if they do keep producing and evolve their game, could produce or vault themselves up into the Jefferson and Chase range. It's not exactly how we like to dynasty, but I'm not going to slam it, but it's just not what we do.
Exactly. And I feel like that's, what there's no right or truly wrong way to dynasty. There's processes that are proven, there's processes that work. And so my challenge to everyone is to really think about that. Like, how much does age come into play? How much does, the ability to do it? And flashes are great. We see flashes from players all the time, but is it something that can consistently happen, that can crack them into the, top eight wide receivers are what matter? Like 9, 10, 11, 12. I just said DK Metcalf's wide receiver 12. And it's like, like he's a good player. I like him. I'm happy to have him on my team, but he's not putting up those Tyreek numbers. He's not putting up, what CeeDee Lamb is doing. Like, that is the thing for me when I really think about it. Why I want to challenge thought processes is who's doing it, and do we have more hope that like some of these guys can do it? Like, do we hope Chris Olave is going to have a situation where he has a better quarterback and things are going to turn around for that offense? Like, hope comes into this, and I don't like to bet on hope when it comes down to drafting.
Yep, it's just we don't like the volatility of what these guys could become. You could vault yourself up like we've seen Amon-Ra St. Brown do, or you can fall down like Elijah Moore has. And no matter how good that first year is, you just don't know what years 2, 3, and beyond are going to happen for these guys, their next coming years. And so the guys that have done it for 5, 6+ years in a row, we've seen the proven production history. We've seen the track record. It's just the guys that we like. I mean, man, Stephon Diggs in the 4th, man. Like,
feels like a steal.
I probably, like, I know we're not getting into the team building specifics of this one, but I'd probably be taking him at that 212 spot. Like, if I can just start the draft with Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs.
Hell of a stack.
Yeah. I mean, I'm getting probably, I forget exactly what the warp stack charts are that Dynasty Fairy puts out over in DD, but that's still my 101 stack. And so if I could take that, I mean, even all the way through the 3rd, man. Yeah. Give us the vet wide receivers, even if they are turning 30, 29.
So let's keep expanding this conversation here. I'm gonna pull up the slide for the next round, but I want to look at running back and these draft picks. And running back, the reason why I want to look at all of it together is we talked about Jonathan Taylor early. We have some of the youth again: Breece Hall, Etienne, Kenneth Walker. We do see the 101 come off the board, which is presumably Bijan Robinson, Javonte Williams, DeAndre Swift. Yeah, we do have a couple aging guys in CMC and Eckler, but they're in the 3rd, 4th round respectively. I just look at that running back, and as you look through and see Nick Chubb in the 6th, and Derrick Henry in the 7th, and Alvin Kamara in the 8th, and Miles Sanders in the 9th, Aaron Jones, David Montgomery in the 10th, Dalvin Cook in the 8th. Like, you can find running back production anywhere. I just don't feel a need to take them early.
It comes up every mock we do. where you get in that third, fourth round, man, you're like, I don't have a running back, and these studs are still on the board. Like, it just feels like too much value to pass up on.
Yep.
And you start looking cross positionally at it too, because we look past the startup whenever we're doing this. It's hard to do. I mean, you're looking at what can I get in terms of Saquon Barkley right now compared to Devontae Adams, and you can probably get 2 seconds or maybe even an extra first on top of Devontae Adams for Saquon Barkley because of the age as soon as you get out of the startup.
Yep.
And so in there, it feels like the value is going to be. It feels like you're passing up on the value, but then you look at these guys and you start to see that you can just team build if you're wanting to really go for it in year one. The team builds that you can make, man, if you just punt on running back and just load up on, like you said, these Miles Sanders and Leonard Fournette. I won't go Leonard Fournette. That's the wrong name to pull there. I don't really believe in that one fully, but Miles Sanders, Derrick Henry's, Josh Jacobs of the world, they're going so much lower, man. Like, you can build a super monster team with tight end and wide receivers just carrying your team and lock up 2 starting quarterbacks if you really want to.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, looking cross positionally, like look at what's going off the board in the range of some of those running backs that are producing. And I would much rather have Derrick Henry than George Pickens. I'd much rather have, Dalvin Cook over Cortland Sutton and Christian Kirk. Like, I'd much rather have Miles Sanders over Rashad Bateman, Gabe Davis, Jahan Dotson, like all of those names. Like man, like the points production and the value favors running back as you get into those 6+ rounds. Like Nick Chubb and Jerry Jeudy coming off the board in the same spot. Like, Nick Chubb is going to produce, and when you look at the points that these guys are going to put up, again, it's a volatile position. So in one, you're not having to invest a ton into the running back, but you can invest more opportunity, like more darts. Like you see, at the end there, you see a bunch of guys coming off the board like Algier, James Cook, Leonard Fournette, Khalil Herbert. If this is best ball, you have a bunch of darts. You have a bunch of opportunities. Yeah, those aren't necessarily the names I want, but you can do that in rounds where you have Aaron Jones still on the board, David Montgomery still on the board, Cam Akers still on the board, Zeke Elliott coming off in the 12th. But when you look at wide receiver, it's not as volatile. A lot of those guys, there is volatility. I'm not going to say there's not, but a lot of those guys stick. Jefferson sticking, Chase sticking, Brown sticking, Lamb sticking, Tyreek, Diggs, Adams, they're sticking. Cup, if he's healthy and they have a team.
Until they phase out of the league, like until they pull in a Odell Beckham. Until they pull in Odell Beckham, I almost said like OJ Brown or something. That was weird.
Antonio Brown.
Antonio. Well, I mean, you can pull that one too. But I mean, we see even these guys still be, at least somewhat fantasy relevant. We know it's really not the case with Odell right now, and there's some other circumstances around that one with multiple injuries that have caused that to finally happen. But yeah, these wide receivers until they fall off, they don't even really hit a cliff like these running backs do. If we want to go back to like RB Cliff data, it's invest in the wide receivers early. We see it every single time, and yeah, you can find the running backs later.
And the last thing I want to do before we jump into those picks is like, it goes down to difference makers at the position, right? Like if I'm going to be able to build a team, I want difference makers at the position, young or old. And I can find difference makers in the 6th, 7th, 8th rounds at running back where I can't in wide receiver, where I can't necessarily in tight end, can't in quarterback. So, my brain automatically thinks, okay, where can I find difference makers? I can find difference makers at quarterback in the 1st. I can find difference makers at wide receiver in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th rounds in this draft. So, like, that's where those difference makers lie. So that's what my brain goes to when I think about positionally drafting, even though, like you mentioned, Saquon Barkley and Devontae Adams back-to-back in the draft. Yeah, Saquon has more value, and he's going to put up points. And that's a player you'd love to have on your team. Man, like Devontae Adams, after that, you're picking Debo, J-Mo, Devonta Smith. Like, he's kind of the last of that producing tier where you can get Nick Chubb, you can get Ramondre, you can get the Derrick Henry. And sometimes you just have to weigh those pros and cons when you're looking at how you want to build.
Yep. All about how you want to team build, and we prefer to build through the wide receivers. So it's how we're probably going to lean most of our startup drafts. I would say the one thing that I've heard from Scott and on Dynasty Trades in 5. You haven't checked out their stuff. They do pretty good stuff over there.
Awesome.
Where they do a lot of team building stuff. They do, how many starters. They go into every single format you could possibly think of before they really analyze the trade. And I think that also does play into a little bit of a factor when you're in the startup. So like most of our leagues, we're looking at, at least minimum start 10, and then we're probably in start 11, start 12, even if we're in lineup. And then if it's best ball, it's even further than that. And that's especially where I think, want to hammer home wide receiver a little bit more. But sometimes, some of these startups, man, I watched one of their episodes last night, and about 70% of their questions were like either 1 QB or 2 QB in start 8. And in the start 8, you actually do still need running back hammers. And so There is a little bit of a team building aspect into it. I forget exactly what the format of this one is, but I do just want to throw that one out there before we just say clean across the board. It's like that because eventually you just can't start these wide receivers. And you actually, whenever you're going up against a team that has like a Breece Hall, Ken Walker, and you're throwing out, Antonio Gibson, Devin Singletary, it's not going to match up as well in a start 8 as much if you're in like a start 11, start 12, like we're normally in.
I think we'll do an episode where we talk about the construction of your team based on your league settings and based on what your league rules are. Because if you are in start 8, you want studs. I do not care at that point. I want studs. If you are in a 10 team, I want studs. Like, give me those dudes, and I will figure out the rest from there. But yeah, we'll do a full episode on some of those team building things, or part of an episode here in the next few weeks, and kind of discuss some of those things and how that looks.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really good. We'll get into that, especially throughout the offseason. We're going to have so much time before this next season starts up. 8 months of just content putting out, and we're going to do all of the drafts during that time, as well as just strategy talk like we normally do, and diving into the strategy as we go through those mocks as well and review them like we're doing here. I think the last thing we got to touch on, but really before we get out of this one, unless we want to dive into a little bit of the quarterbacks and tight ends, I think we can maybe wrap those couple ones into some of the more team building format, because I think it's a little bit more, it's a little bit easier to explain where the quarterback value and where the tight end value is going off when you're looking at team building aspects of things. But I think the last thing that I want to touch on here in terms of just pure value is these picks, because we've seen it where a lot of the recent mocks that we've done, we've had 2 that have had positional placeholder or kicker placeholders, and we've got them covered up here where they're actually showing the pick value. Most of ours have had a gap between the 102, 103, and 104. The 104 coming off a little bit later, but we've seen a lot of hype and a lot of buildup of these quarterbacks lately, where we're thinking we're going to have 3 locked and loaded top quarterbacks. Anthony Richardson's gaining a lot of traction. And so if you're looking at these picks in terms of quarterback value, I'm actually starting to be okay with throwing this 104 up into this range as well.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Bijan belongs in that 204 to 208 range. That's typically where we've seen him go in startups. And then when you talk about the quarterback position, it's Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, or Will Levis. If they get the draft capital through top 15 picks, maybe even top 20 picks, like, you're going to want to take them. Like, you absolutely are. I'm not sure about Trey Lance falling this far behind those guys, but they do belong in that range above Kirk Cousins and above, the rest is what I'm going to call them. So I'm with you. Like, I'm fully comfortable. I don't know that I'd be taking the 102 before Dak Prescott and Kyler Murray, but yeah, I am with you. I am with you on that.
Yeah, I think I truthfully think the 102, 103, 104, and Trey Lance should all be in their little group together. And then I'm right there with you that I'm going to take what I know in Kyler Murray and Dak Prescott. Kyler Murray, his ACL tear was late, but there's projections coming out that he, if everything goes right, could be back by even week 1. I know the rushing isn't probably going to be there, but he's still a good enough passer. We've seen his rushing come down this year because Cliff told him not to run, apparently. And if Cliff gets out of there, and then long term, Kyler Murray's just got to be up here higher than this for me. I'm just going to take that known production from him. But yeah, I actually think throwing this 104, and if we start seeing the rumors come out that even Will Levis and Anthony Richardson are both going to be in the top first round, I know we got burned with this last year, so I'm hesitant to do it because we were told that there was going to be 4, possibly 5 first-round quarterbacks last year, and then there was 1 and then none for another 3 rounds. So, man, I'm not there yet. I want to see a little bit more. I want to see these guys, actually perform through the offseason before I'm going to be fully into throwing all those picks up there. But rumors are starting to swirl, and we've got to start adjusting value.
Let me just say, let's just stop. I'm ready for 2022 to end. The draft sucked. The NFL season has sucked. Like, there's just been so much going on. Like, I am so ready for 2023. Hopefully it's not more of the same. But yeah, I'm with you. I like the gap there between the 104 and 105. Most likely it's going to be Gibbs, but when we talked about, the draft class as a whole, there's a lot of really good running backs, man. There's a lot of really, really good running backs in this class. We'll see where they go, what that ends up being. So if I'm over here taking Jahmyr Gibbs right around DeAndre Swift, I don't know. Maybe that's right. Yeah, 105, 106, 107, all within, a round plus of each other. Any gaps? Are you okay with where like the 109 through 112? Anything kind of stand out to you with these picks, or is it pretty status quo for you?
I do think once we get past those, where the kind of quarterbacks are falling off the board with each other, looking at the values here, back end first, you're comparing them with Hollywood, George Pickens. I'm fine if you still want to have your shots on those guys rather than taking a re-roll into 2023. There's an argument to be made that you're having the more liquid asset because you are just having to pick until you do your startup draft. So there's a little bit of an argument to maybe push these picks up a little bit more, actually, in my opinion, over some of these guys. But I don't think I see too much that's horribly wrong with any of these values. There's some of the vets, that we're probably going to have a little bit higher up than where they're going. DeAndre Hopkins still being down here in the 10th round is absolutely ludicrous to me. Whenever I'm looking at these guys, because I actually just did my own startup mock that we haven't broken down yet. We might break down later, but I took D-Hop up in like the 6th round because I'm looking at these guys and I'm like, what? He's tanked in value because of last year. But if you're looking at the production that he put out this year and you're comparing it to guys like Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill, I don't see why he should be much different than any of those guys. And getting him here in the 10th is an absolute steal, in my opinion.
Yeah, man. I mean, he's also 30, but he's good. He was not hurt, everybody. He was suspended for using PEDs. If anything, he's going to be stronger than ever. I'm kidding, of course, but like when you're looking at, I know Christian Watson is the hot name, and Christian Watson went rather early for me. I mean, he's in the 5th round here. Like, he's up there with Treylon Burks and Michael Pittman. Like, I just can't justify. I know youth. I get it. Jerry Jeudy, youth. And you have to kind of pick your poison, but you're going to be able to sell DeAndre Hopkins. It's not like he's a dying asset. I mean, technically he is because of age, but if he's producing and like he has been, and he should going forward, yeah, I'm right there with you. Like, if you don't want to put him in the Devontae Adams tier, like, I'm perfectly fine putting him there in that 5th, 6th round versus the 10th. Like, whew.
Yeah, if you could send a mid-second for DeAndre Hopkins right now, imagine your playoff window's still open and you can just, I know obviously this is a startup and it's not going to have any correlation, but man, what I wouldn't give on some competing teams to send a mid-second that are still in the playoffs, send a mid-second to just pick up DeAndre Hopkins. Oh, it's Trace McSorley. God damn it, Trace. Why are you there? I actually don't know if I do that anymore down a playoff push. I might just actually hold the pick until we know what the quarterback position is. Disregard that. I had to work through that one a little bit live, but I still love the, long-term, next year value of D-Hop here.
Yeah, I mean, and talking about value in these rounds, and again, we'll break down more of this later, but you're talking about a early to mid 2nd round pick for Aaron Rodgers, Geno Smith, Daniel Jones. Again, it is a startup, but when you're on the clock, you are legitimately picking that pick, or you have the option to take a quarterback or a running back or a wide receiver. And I have a really tough time choosing a random 23-second mid to late over quarterbacks, man. Zach Wilson. Like, I know I hate Zach Wilson. I don't hate him. I'm just not a big fan. I'm not a believer.
You don't
And
hate
you're
him
telling me I can
personally, you
send
just hate his NFL talent and his fantasy outlook.
yeah, exactly. Like the fantasy outlook, I'm just not a huge fan of, and we'll see. Maybe that can change. Maybe he's maturing, and that'll adjust. But again, a 208 for Zach Wilson,
For a
I
starting
will go
quarterback.
send that out everywhere.
Yeah, man. This is actually just looking at it, and like you said, we'll get into this one a little bit more. But man, I think we do got to talk about these tier 2 quarterbacks. Not tier 2 quarterbacks, but these QB2s that are coming off the board here that I can send off mid-seconds for. Yeah, see you mid-seconds. I don't need Chase Brown in the mid-second next year as a running back. I would much rather in Superflex have that quarterback that's going to be hitting my lineup much more than that running back has the potential to be more than likely.
And I brought this up last week because we talked about this player that didn't come off in the first 10 rounds. And I wanted to see where he came off in this one. One Tom Brady didn't come off in the first 12 rounds, and I have the full board up because we're just looking at the first 12. He is in the 16th round. He went after Brock Purdy. And I am just dumbfounded right now.
Jordan Love, Desmond Ridder, Malik Willis, and Brock Purdy.
I do not care if I'm only getting 1 year of Tom Brady. I will take him every time in the double-digit rounds if that's where he's going. Holy cow.
Can I send out thirds for Tom Brady? Is that a thing? Like,
it might be.
I get okay. Actually, this is going to be perfect segue out of here because I do think I get out of here and start ending up this thing. And also want to mention we are going to start having ADP data from all of these mocks. I'm building the Excel sheet out right now. I know there's probably easier ways to do it, but I'm building the Excel sheet out right now where we're going to be able to start tracking all of our ADP data from all of these mocks and live startups like this one all the way throughout the off season. And we're going to build our own fantasy draft room ADP, which is going to be awesome to have and look at. But the one thing that I wanted to look at here, I'm losing train of thought. And so Tom Brady, as soon as we get past the offseason and we get into the offseason, one of the videos that I want to do here is start looking at how we're going to push our teams into the offseason once we're able to trade again, starting to pick up guys that we should be dropping off our rosters, waiver wire guys that we should be picking up and looking to for the future, mostly DS dog shit dart throw running backs. We're going to be picking up those guys, dropping old wide receivers. Want to get into that, and we'll also touch on some possible trade targets, off-season guys who are going to be moving teams. All of that stuff, definitely. I mean, we're going to be busy as soon as this off-season hits us, probably more so than we even are right now into the regular season.
Yeah, we will hit the ground running in January with we're going to be doing rookie mocks. Obviously, big thing coming up here. Rookie mocks. We'll continue to do dynasty startups. Redraft season will kick things off. We will be doing a ton of mock drafts for us to break down and to compile ADP. So yeah, really looking forward to that. And then, like you said as well, in early January, we're going to start looking at the off-season, program. Basically, it's time to bulk up that roster, maybe trim off the fat, and we'll talk about what positions, where, why, how, and all of that and more. Anything else you want to dive into before we get out of here?
No, man, I think I do really want to dig into some of these teams. There's a lot of trades throughout this one that are going to impact how the values are moved around this board. So I do want to get into diving into maybe a couple of these teams, looking at how their rosters shook out, looking at how they traded around the board. I think we're going to do probably an episode either next week or maybe we'll let this next week or whenever we get to it, we'll get to it soon. We'll let you all know. And I think that's all we've got for today, man. Wrap us on out of here.
Perfect. Hey, thank you again. Please like and subscribe. And thank you again for joining us here in the Fantasy Draft Room.